Joe! Joe on Joe is the only podcast where Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, everybody. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and welcome back to Joe on Joe, the only podcast where I've covered every episode of G.I. Joe, the Sunbow cartoon, DIC. We've even covered Extreme, and every issue of the Marvel Real American Hero comic book, page by page, panel by panel. This week, we've got another fabulous episode of You on Joe, and if you're new to the program, You on Joe is where you, the listener, the G.I. Joe fan, you're the star of the show. Whatever your favorite thing about G.I. Joe, that's what we're going to talk about. Cartoons, comics, games, action figures, old video games, as you're going to see today. Whatever it is, it's up for discussion. So if you want to participate, listeners, and you want to be a guest, please reach out to me on social media at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Joe on Joe Pod, or send me an email to joeandjoepod@gmail.com. Let me know what topic you want to cover, and we'll absolutely get you on the show. If you've reached out in the past, and for some reason I overlooked it, reach out again, and I'm sorry for that. But while you're online, please give me a rate and review through your podcast app. It really helps. Every review helps grow the show. It gets more visibility, gets more listeners, and then we get a wider variety of You on Joes. If you're also inclined, you can help us out by visiting the Patreon page at patreon.com/JoeandJoePod. You help keep the show float that way. Now, speaking of support, listeners, we've been talking about this for a couple weeks, and this is the final week to back it. Austin Huff and his upcoming Super Joe comic book. This comic book is on Kickstarter. Go to Kickstarter, search for Super Joe Unlimited, because right now, Larry Hama is on board. That's right. Larry Hama's there. Bob Hall's contributing. Netho Diaz is contributing. We've got a whole bunch of great classic bronze, silver, whatever age artists, modern, whatever age comic artists. There's a bunch of people contributing to this. And we're talking about Super Joe, which was the Hasbro precursor to G.I. Real American Hero, and the post-Adventure Team G.I. Joe. So we covered it a few weeks back on this program. If you're unfamiliar with that, you can go back and listen to that in the archive. And please go to Kickstarter. Check it out. The campaign ends on July 11th. At this, as of this recording, they've got just a couple grand to go to make it go live. And I say, let's make it happen, because I really want to see this project. And Larry's aboard. So many great people are attached. We need to get this over the finish line. So please, please, please go to Kickstarter. Check out Super Joe Unlimited. And now you need to check out our sponsors, the Movies in a Meal podcast. In the beginning of time, the smallest organism gained sentience and thought to itself, I really need a good meal. Then, a bunch of other stuff happened, and finally the Lumiere brothers started showing movies in France. This was all the inspiration that fellow broadcasters Brad, Keith, and Ben needed to combine these two primal needs into the Movies in a Meal podcast. The Movies in a Meal is one of the most casual and relaxing film talk podcasts you could ever listen to. These three friends enjoy a good meal together while talking all about the movies. And not just reviews, they do favorite lists, comparison discussions, genre talks, anything and everything that you can think of. They've even broken their solemn promise inherent in the name and branched out into TV talk. So I love the variety of films they bring to the table. They cover new releases, classics, cult films, often in one episode. It's really a delight to listen to, and it has something for every movie fan out there to enjoy. So if you're looking to grow your podcast library, if you eat meals, and if you've ever seen a movie, then you should give Ben, Keith, and Brad a listen and subscribe to the Movies in a Meal podcast. They've been a great sponsor to this show. I love the Movies in a Meal podcast, and I'd like all of you to love them too. And they covered Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny the other day. I loved that movie myself. I thought it was a great way to send off one of my absolute favorite top tier characters of all time. I was emotional. I was so happy to see it. But this week, we have the pleasure of longtime friend of the show and friend of mine, Dave Amiott, joins us today to discuss one corner of the classic G.I. Joe memory that really gets overlooked quite a bit, the Commodore 64 game. Dave, he's a writer, he's a stand-up, and he's a performer here in Los Angeles. And if you are in the area, please check him out in the Thursday. It's a recurring Thursday show called This Week, This Week. It plays at the Open Fist Theater, which is an absolute hilarious name of a theater, in Atwater Village. He's very funny. We talk about that on the show, his upcoming shows, but he always brings a G.I. Joe reference whenever he can in his stand-up. He absolutely does. I've seen him do cosplay comedy as General Hawk, and it's hilarious. Now, we talked about the Commodore 64 game. This was aptly named G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero. It came out in 1985, and it was really extremely cartoon, toy, and comic book accurate. It was published by Epix, and it was also available on the Apple II. Now, both systems I never had. So while I was aware that this game existed, have had zero experience with it. The box art is a very snazzy Tron-looking neon cover, and the start screen, it's a full-on recreation of the G.I. Joe #1 comic book cover. So this is a game that absolutely back in the day I would have played for hours and hours if only I had a Commodore 64. Now, sit back, dust off your old 5 1/4 boot disc, and please get ready to flip it over because we're going to want to play side 2 of my discussion with Dave Amiott about the G.I. Joe Commodore 64 game from 1985.
You remember this week I was asking you about Serpentor and whether or not he was actually a good military commander.
Yes, you were.
So that came about because so in this sketch show that I'm doing, it's sketches interspersed with weekend update style desk jokes.
Fun.
And so I pitched sketches, and then the writers, we also pitched desk jokes. And one of the desk jokes that I wrote this week was, for the benefit of Americans who are having difficulty understanding the power dynamic in the attempted Russian coup, we offer this comparison. Putin is Cobra Commander, his military leaders are Serpentor, and Prigozhin is Destro, but like the gold helmet version.
See, Dave, that's what I love. Your comedy always brings it back to G.I. Joe / broad stroke geek culture stuff. And I appreciate that so much. So you're going up at the Open Fist Theater, which, let's be honest, it's a great, funny name. It's in Atwater Village out here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
The show is called...
There's free parking in a lot about a block south of the theater.
If you don't live in Los Angeles, you need to understand how important that is, gang. Free parking is huge. The show is called This Week.
Yes.
You've been a writer on it for about half a year, and on July 13th, you are making your stage debut as a performer in the show. That's
right. It's directed by Ron West, who is a big guy in the Second City,
which...
He was also a recurring character on Third Rock from the Sun. He played Professor Strudwick.
Oh, nice.
And then he was also... It's been fascinating working with him because he was on the British version of Whose Line Is It Anyway a bunch of times.
Uh-huh.
And that's something, when I saw that in 1992, 93, it literally changed the trajectory of my life. Because it got me interested in doing improv, and that's what I pursued. So
Fabulous. Well, I can't go any further because you never know who's going to listen to this because we're, sharing amongst improv friends and all that stuff. I want to point out that Second City has given up on Los Angeles, and they have officially pulled their support for a Los Angeles-based comedy school.
Yeah.
Disappointing, short-sighted are the words that come to mind. Treacherous backstabbing to all the students.
But not unique.
Obviously, COVID, a lot of theaters closed out here, so we get that. I understand that. But
I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Meltdown Comics was trying to have a school.
That's a different conversation, though.
Yeah.
That's a different conversation for another time, Dave. You and I can chat offline about that. But as long as I've got the listeners' ears, Second City really did a screw job to the employees of the Second City. The new owners really did a screw job of the people in California who wanted to continue on in their teachings of local teaching. In the hub of entertainment, Hollywood. They've completely pulled out, and so there will be no Second City in Los Angeles, and they didn't even try. So it's disappointing, and who knows what the future will bring, but the future will be less funny in Los Angeles because Second City is not here. However, This Week is here. And that goes up almost every Thursday. Sometimes there's some conflicts. And
yes, we are currently booked through the middle of August.
Oh, fabulous.
Every week through the middle of August.
I need to get out there.
There's a lot of the talent, both the writing and the performers, are people with Second City backgrounds who managed to get some training at Second City or even taught there.
Yep.
And, at the time we're recording this, the writers are still on strike. Have the actors officially gone on strike?
As of this recording, no, not yet.
But it's looming.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
if the actors go on strike, the city will shut down.
Sure. Yeah. But if you want your fix of topical comedy, this show is a way to get it.
Right. And occasional references to Cobra.
Occasional,
which I really appreciate, guys. So you guys all know Dave Amiott. He's been on the show before. He's fabulous. He's a friend. He's a super talent. And Dave, you reached out and you said, I want to talk about the Commodore 64 game.
Yes.
Now, here's what's funny. We've talked video games on the show before. And I've said, we need to, at one point, we're going to circle back and do like deep dives into each individual game. I always thought that I had played this game. So when I did the research for it, because I never had a Commodore 64. Some friends of mine did. So I would only play Commodore when I was at their house and I loved it, but I'd never had one. I've never played this game in my life. I don't know what was in my brain. I've never seen this game. I've never played it. And now I'm in love with it.
Oh, it's a great game.
So
I will point out, in the interest of absolute accuracy, in my house, we did not have the Commodore 64. We had the Commodore 128.
Okay.
It was backwards compatible and could play all the games for the 64.
Nice. Well, it was published by Epyx, EPYX. It came out in 1985. So they took advantage of those all the way up through the 84 Joes.
Yes. So what do you want to start with?
I want to start with your first impressions of this game. What's do you remember literally the first time you saw it, or did you just have a general, because it was a long time ago for everybody. Do you have a general impression of loving it? What is your specific interaction with it?
I don't remember the first time I played it. I do remember distinctly the first time that I beat one of the Cobra characters. I don't remember which character I was playing as, but I remember beating the Baroness, and I ran downstairs to tell my sister, and I ruined the recording she was making of her piano lesson.
Oh.
She had to start over to prove to her teacher that she could play it.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I was 8 or 9, maybe.
Yeah.
I was an excitable kid, and again, at that point, I must have been playing the game for a while and just never winning.
Yeah.
Because it's a challenging game. It's not a frustratingly difficult game.
That's what it seems like. So an overview, listeners, if you're not familiar with it, came out in 85. There's 2 modes to it. It never ends either. There's no end game to it, which could be it's both. That's both fun, but also there's a reward that I think we want now in video games, and say now in the last, I'll say 20 years, but at the time, you just wanted to play, right? So
Sure.
While you were interested in getting to the end stage and Pac-Man or whatever, most normal humans like me, I never got to the end of any game I played. So I just wanted something that was playable and replayable. I'm talking about Atari and NES kind of stuff.
Now, I do recall the frustration I felt because I don't know if you've read the instruction manual for this game. You can see it for free at archive.org.
Uh-huh.
But it says there's no end to the game.
Yes.
Your villains will escape, the Joes will escape. So I don't remember having read that. And I do recall being because there's 8 Cobra characters that if you beat them, they become captured.
Right.
I remember I had captured 7 of them, and I was beating the last one. And I'm like, oh, hey, I just won. And then you go back, it's like, oh, wait, Zartan escapes? What happened?
So that information is in the manual?
Yes.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool.
It says both your Joes and Cobras are crafty and they'll escape from jail.
Oh, that's really great. So to do an overview of the gameplay, there's different hotspots around the world that you go to and you fight either Cobra. Well, you fight one of, 8 different Cobras.
Yes.
And then, is it 12 Joes?
Yes. In the one-on-one, it's 12, and then in the vehicle modes, it's the 4 Joe vehicles and their drivers.
Right. And so you get to choose between, let me call that screenshot back up, Duke, Scarlet, Recondo, Torpedo, Snake Eyes, and this is V1 Snake Eyes, Roadblock, Spirit, Zap, Gung Ho, Snow Job, Blowtorch, which was a shock to me that Blowtorch was in this game, and Stalker. And then
let me ask you, who would you have had instead of Blowtorch?
Oh, no, I love Blowtorch. I'm shocked that they included him just because I watched so you can go to YouTube and you can watch gameplay video. The one I found was a C64 was it called Long Play G.I. Joe.
Yeah.
And
most of the ones on there, they're about like 20 to 30 minutes.
Yeah, and it's just playing through the full game. And for the bad guys, you get to choose between Destro, Baroness, Zartan, Firefly, Cobra Commander, Storm Shadow, Major Blood, and Scrap Iron. So, I mean, that's a murderer's row of bad guys. I don't know that I would have had anyone other than Blowtorch. But in watching the video, I guess I was shocked that it actually had fire coming out of Blowtorch. I was waiting for Blowtorch to shoot a laser. You know what I mean? Like, just have it be standard. But
well, that's, again, another one of the great things about this video game is that the weapons, for the most part, are character specific.
Yeah.
Scarlet and Spirit shoot arrows. So does Storm Shadow. Scrap Iron shoots missiles. So does Destro. He shoots his wrist rockets.
That's great.
And in terms of the character selection, they have pros and cons. So like Blowtorch moves slowly, but his weapon is really powerful. So you can defeat a villain by just landing 2 shots as Blowtorch. Whereas with, if you're playing as Stalker or Recondo, you might have to shoot him 5 or 6 times.
Right. And to go into the gameplay, there's 2 modes. There's a character on character battle, which is a static scene that could be there's a snowy backdrop. It's
Arctic, desert, urban, and Cobra base.
There you go. And you, what would be a good comp game for it? Kind of like, it's better. The bits are better because this would have been a 64-bit, right? Because in that Commodore 64, isn't that the whole idea of it? But it's like they move a little bit like Berserk.
Okay, I don't know that game as well.
Oh, okay, but so you're moving around the screen. There's obstacles. There's a log in the snow thing, and you
kind of work. You're working in 3 dimensions, but the movement is limited. You can only go up, down, left, right.
Yeah, it's a 2D. It's a 2D shooter, kind of, but with
it's sort of like a moving characters on a chessboard.
Right. And as you fire your weapon, you try to hit the Cobra. The Cobra fires back at you. Meanwhile, there's a secondary free agent, we'll call it, that roams the screen and tries to kill both of you, I believe, right? The pack rat, and there's a Cobra snake, the snake, the robotic snake armor.
Yeah.
Marches around.
There's the snake arm.
Right. It marches around the screen.
At either of the characters, depending on, so let's say I'm playing as Snake Eyes against Major Blood in the urban landscape. If the snake armor is coming at me and I shoot the snake armor, it will turn around and go towards Major Blood.
Oh, that's great. That's a great mechanic.
And if Major Blood shoots it, it'll come back towards me.
That's a really great mechanic.
Now, the pack rat, on the other hand, is just stupid and it'll fire at anybody.
Ha.
On the desert level, as you're going through that, it alternates between a Skyhawk and a Cobra Fang that will come across through the sky, and they'll drop a bomb or shoot. And this is the thing about the third-party non-playable character antagonist, let's say, because if you're playing against the computer, they almost never hurt the Cobra character. They'll only hurt you. Like, I never saw the Skyhawk land a shot on a Cobra if I was playing against the computer. Now,
right.
there is the 2-player mode.
There is a 2-player mode.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting. Well, real quick, I think it might be a good thing that because one of the things I did find is that there's a long-standing bug in this where if the pack rat kills the Cobra guy, the game freezes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So that was one of the known bugs on one of these, like one of these deep dive, pages. So that might be good that they don't necessarily attack the bad guys all that much. But it is 2-player. That's interesting because I haven't played it. I looked for some ROM emulators. I've had those in the past. I didn't have one right now, and I didn't want to just install one super quick to possibly infect and destroy my computer. But the whole game itself is real playable. If you guys are into getting ROMs and everything, you can find the ROMs out there. They're real playable, or you can just watch them.
And like I say, I had older sisters and they were not interested in playing this game, so I rarely did the 2-player mode. Yeah. I was mostly playing against the computer.
Oh, it's great. And then the secondary mode of the game itself is an overhead, kind of like Combat meets River Raid a little bit, shot of one of those 4 vehicles that you discussed. Let me call it the
Dragonfly, the Sky Striker, the Mobat, or the Vamp.
Yep. And you choose
through environments, and you have to shoot Hiss tanks, and there's 8 that you have to find and shoot, and they can shoot at you.
Mm-hmm.
Once you destroy them all, then you land and you rescue any of your captured Joes.
That's great. Yeah, so you're playing as Ace, Steeler, Wild Bill, and Clutch.
Yep.
It's really great. And then there's cutscene images of the G.I. Joe base, of a Cobra temple. When you defeat a Cobra, someone from Cobra, it cuts to the Cobra temple and is like, we'll get our revenge on you, G.I. Joe, so on and so forth, and vice versa. I think is the Joe headquarters in flames or something?
No. The Joe headquarters you really only see when your characters are being deployed.
Oh, okay. Well, what happens when Cobra wins? Because the playthrough video I'm watching, G.I. Joe wins in pretty much every.
Yeah. When Cobra wins, it's again just the shot of the Cobra temple, but the text is different.
Oh, okay.
Because
okay.
Cobra is victorious.
Got it.
Now, I want to get your opinion.
Oh, the APC's in this thing too.
Yep.
When you deploy, it's a little APC crawls out of the G.I. Joe headquarters. That's amazing.
Now, in those scenes, the music that's playing is the standard G.I. Joe theme.
Yep.
But in the shots of the Cobra temple, it seems to be a new, unique piece of music. And I'm wondering what you think about that as the Cobra theme.
Well, that sounds familiar. Hold on. Hold on. I'm going to hit play, and it's going to play over your audio track. So listeners, listen up. So Dave, I don't think you heard that just because of the way our tech setup is, but we just played the Cobra theme, and then it switched over to the G.I. Joe theme. So listeners, you can hear that. It's that MIDI soundtrack, that computer MIDI sound. That Cobra theme sounds familiar though.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm pretty well familiar with all the incidental music from the cartoon show.
Well, I like it. I think it totally works.
I mean, if you were to say that that's the Cobra equivalent of the Imperial March.
Yeah.
The kind of thing you should play whenever Cobra Commander shows up. I'd love to hear a fully orchestrated version.
Oh, it does. Yeah, that does sound good. I love this selection. Scarlet, she's in blue and black, which makes me think that doing her traditional colors somehow clashed with the backgrounds.
Because Baroness is also blue and black. I thought Scarlet was more like orange and black.
No, in the game she's black and you know what? Hold on a second.
Because here's the thing: if you're playing against Zartan takes the form of one of the Joes.
Right.
So sometimes Zartan will look like Scarlet.
No, so this is interesting. So in game, Scarlet is orange and black, but in her selection screen, she's blue and black. So I don't. That might have just been a communication error on their side, or maybe some reason it didn't render well or something. But I mean, listen, the blue and black look on Scarlet looks good. Let's get a Super 7 action figure of just these.
Oh, that could be fun.
How great would that be if Super 7 did like 8-bit action figure versions of this game? I don't know, because I know there's and I'm sorry, I should have looked this up on Twitter. There's someone on Twitter who's been doing 8-bit versions of the G.I. Joes, and it's great. And I'm sorry that I'm forgetting your name, but they look really fun, and he does 8-bit versions, and he shares it around, and they look awesome. I would love to figure out a way for Super 7 to do like this, and that would be a great little collectible.
Well, here's what I was thinking about. You look at this selection of the 12 and then additional 4 available Joes. That's a pretty good cross section of the team.
It is.
Up to 1984. If you were building a toy collection based solely on the characters you could play in this game,
yeah,
you'd be pretty well set. I'd say you'd probably also want Doc and Mutt, and then either Airborne or Ripcord. But other than that, you've got everything covered.
Well, so Mutt I wouldn't want without Junkyard. No offense to Mutt, but like Mutt, you'd have to figure out a way to get Junkyard just because he's so intrinsic. Doc, not as much because he's a doctor versus a fighter. Well,
I'm not saying as characters playable in the game. I'm saying plays in your collection.
Oh, of course. Oh, this is a great cross section of that. Right. I love that they have Zap in this, and not only do they have Zap, they absolutely included Zap's snappy mustache.
Yep.
That's great. They all actually look they're all spot on. Even the Scarlet one, it's just the colors are, I'm looking at the loading screen. Her colors are a little off, but they all look really spot on. Snake Eyes looks great. So you would expect Duke, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, and at the time probably Roadblock. Probably you would expect Gung Ho. I don't remember. It was because I know Stalker was huge in the comic books, and I know I love Stalker. People love Stalker. I don't remember. Was he a huge action figure though?
Well, Stalker had the benefit of being one of the original 13 with a more unique look.
Right.
So I think that helped him stand out.
And he looks good in the game because it's just all camo running around.
Yeah, and he moves fast, and his weapon is relatively powerful.
Yeah.
Good character to play as. I played as Stalker and Recondo a lot.
Oh, nice. And Snowjob looks great because he looks so visually different. Blowtorch looks great because he looks so visually different. Spirit, same, and also Spirit was just awesome.
Yes.
Recondo, so when you say you played as Recondo a lot, what was his? Did he carry a machete?
No, he had a rifle. But so the thing when you were playing the game, once you got a little familiar with it, you would sort of do. So the way it worked is you would select which Cobra you were going to play against, and then you'd pick which Joe you were going to play as. And I tended to prefer to play as the Joes who were faster, because like if you were playing against Cobra Commander or the Baroness, who moved fast and had a less powerful weapon, you'd want to play as a Joe who could also move fast and dodge. But then if you were playing against like Destro or Scrap Iron or Firefly, who moved more slowly but had more powerful weapons, you'd want to play as a Joe who could, avoid those slow-moving missiles.
Right.
So, but I will say, in the defense of the game, once you got really good at it, it became a way to challenge yourself as, can I play as Blowtorch or Roadblock who move more slowly and still win?
Let's point out, I'm noticing this now as I look at these. They did a great job with these sprites.
Yes.
In building them in this loading screen. They're visually bigger or smaller based, like Roadblock is huge.
Yes.
Like they're not all, quote, the same size. Roadblock is massive and he takes up a huge part of the screen. Scarlet's slighter. Zap is slighter as well. Snowjob's thinner. They look solid.
Yeah.
Now I did read somewhere that they said Snake Eyes was OP. Like it was, if you played as Snake Eyes, you pretty much killed. Do you recall that being the case or anything?
Yeah. Again, Snake Eyes had the advantage of being fast, but his weapon wasn't as powerful. Again, it wasn't like with Blowtorch or Roadblock where you could land 2 or 3 shots and win. So with Snake Eyes, you still had to hit the other guy 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm. And it's Commando Snake Eyes, so he doesn't have a sword. But right. They do give him, it's interesting. They give him the ninja slitted face mask, but he's got the Commando body.
Yeah.
That's it looks good, but that's an interesting thing for the time. I wonder if the cross sash made it harder to made it just because it might have looked like it's easier to draw a straight up and down lines versus like diagonal looking ones on the figure.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think they paid that much attention to the sprites for the gameplay. If you're looking at them from the side, you can't really see the sash anyway.
Right. No, I'm still looking at the loading screen.
Yeah. Now, I will say I had the thought that
no, you can on the side you can see it on. I just clicked over to his gameplay. You could see that he has the up and down look. I bet you it's got more to do with that, because they definitely put a ton of great detail into this. Like, whoever did this did it with love.
absolutely there's so much care, and the other thing, like I say, some of the characters move more fast or slow. Some of the characters have more powerful weapons. Some of the characters have better endurance, like they can take more shots.
Mm-hmm.
Like Scarlet, if she gets hit, she takes more damage than Roadblock does.
Yeah.
And that's all programmed in.
Right. You know, the Baroness, she looks kind of like her comic book version, is what she looks like. Yeah, she looks more like that blue costume she wore in the comics. The snake armor looks really great animated like this.
The whole thing it's a terrific looking game.
Yeah.
I had the thought similar to what you did, where if I had the time and was more artistically inclined, I would try and make game sprites of other Joes. Like, what would a 8-bit that a skin you could put in this game look like? Or Ripcord or Doc or Rock and Roll, any of those guys.
Right. Hold on one second. I'm going to look, see if I can find it real quick, and see if that's who it is. Tay Whiskey on Twitter, at Taylor_WICH. Tay Whiskey. He does pixel art G.I. Joes, and he does them wonderfully.
Let's hope he's storing those images somewhere else as well.
Yeah, Twitter's having a moment. But I couldn't place the account, but yeah, absolutely. I've interacted with Tay a few times, and he puts out a bunch of stuff. So just find Tay Whiskey and search for 8-bit Joes, and he puts really great detail in them. A lot of thought goes into them, and because it's 8-bit, the further you pull it away from your eyes, especially my terrible eyes, the sharper they look. And then you get close and you go, oh man, he really is putting in the care and the time to choose that pixel to shade a little bit to give just the right accent. Like, it's real talented. The one I'm looking at is Dr. Mindbender, Scarlet, Lady J, and Roadblock. They look great.
Now, that made me think, when I was preparing to talk about this with you, in the mid-90s, when I was first getting online and doing, communicating with people on the internet and seeing what kind of things people were putting out there, I remember there was a thing with different skins that you could put on the game Doom.
Yeah.
Specifically, I was reading a Doctor Who forum, and someone was like, oh yeah, you can program this skin and it makes the enemies look like Daleks or Cybermen. And, I find myself wondering how effective that would be with G.I. Joe characters. Like, if you could change Doom to make all the bad guys look like Cobra Troops.
Yeah. Because
that Doom was what I thought of as the next logical extension of this type of gameplay, where this G.I. Joe game isn't necessarily immersive. Mm-hmm. It's not like first person or third person shooter. I don't know what the gaming term for it would be. It's overhead. But you are moving through an environment and battling an enemy.
Right.
So it kind of reminded me of like the boss levels of Shadows of the Empire, the Star Wars game.
Oh, yeah.
Where you were basically in one room shooting at an Atsit or Boba Fett and the Slave One, what have you. But you could pretty much move wherever you needed to in the room to, get your advantage. You could hide behind stuff, that kind of thing. So we would, I'll be honest, this is my favorite G.I. Joe game.
Awesome.
There aren't many others that I've enjoyed as much. And I wonder if I would enjoy that kind of gameplay in another game.
Yeah. This brings us once again circling back to, let's just keep beating the drums for G.I. Joe to get a good video game. And I don't want to hear about the one that came out a couple of years ago. That's not a good video game. I want a real G.I. Joe game with, and there's so many good ways to do it. Obviously, we've talked before about, just even the idea of reskinning a Call of Duty style game. If you don't want to get that gritty, do something like the Marvel Ultimate Alliance game, where it's a little top, or like same format as Diablo 4 that just came out, like a top down. You can see your character, you see what your character's up to, and they like Marvel Ultimate Alliance was great in that, and you could pick your team. Level up your other Joes, select Joes to go on different missions. That level of game, I don't understand why Hasbro's been unable to do anything good with the G.I. Joe on a video game license, because it seems absolutely built in for success.
Yeah, and you're in a better position to talk about that than I am, because honestly, playing Shadows of the Empire, Dark Forces 2, those are the last video games I really played.
Yeah.
I've never been much of a game.
I've played a lot of games since then. Yeah, for sure. Well, it's funny. So yeah, those are like first person shooters, and the thing with that I would prefer for a property like G.I. Joe, I want to see the guy I'm playing as. So
and not just from the back.
Yeah, well, yeah. Most video games, you end up having to deal with the from the back issue. So, but at least if it's third person, you still get to see your guy.
Yeah.
And you could rotate your camera, various things. Traditionally with video games, because video games are very expensive to make, and they take a lot of work.
Sure.
But traditionally with video games, when there's licenses involved, the licenses are so expensive that there's not a lot of money left in the budget to do a good game. That has been the rule forever. I figured that out when I was a little kid, before I ever worked at any job remotely close to dealing with video games. And it's well known.
Okay, well,
there's got to be a middle ground, because lately they've put out some really great games with like that Transformers fight for Cybertron or something that came out a few years ago. That was really good. There's gotta be a way to get G.I. Joe into a decent game. And I know that they're working on one, so listeners, I get it. I know that there's one in the works. I have no faith that it's going to be any good.
Oh. Well, okay, so we're talking about sort of 80s retro gaming era. In addition to my Commodore 64, before that, we had in our house a system called the Odyssey.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you recall that. It had a keyboard on it. And all of the games we got for the Odyssey were not the popular games. They were the Odyssey version of popular games. So there was one called KC Munchkin, which is basically a knockoff of Pac-Man.
Okay.
Another one called Max Pete's. There was a knockoff of Donkey Kong.
Oh my God. Were there no lawyers at the time?
I mean, I say not.
Were all the lawyers busy?
Inspired by, let's say. But then, we got the Commodore 64, which we also used because we had a word processing program for it. So we used it for school assignments, but we also played a lot of games. And we also had an Atari 2600. And my two favorite games on that were Pitfall and River Raid, both of which have kind of G.I. Joe vibes.
Oh, yeah. I've talked about that before. The River Raid, absolutely. That was my G.I. Joe simulator for me.
Sure. And honestly, the thing of it is, when I had this G.I. Joe game for the Commodore, I rarely liked to play in the vehicle mode because I found them long and kind of boring, and I could never find all 8 HISS tanks that I had to destroy, so I'd end up just flying around and getting bored.
Mm-hmm.
Vehicle modes had been more like River Raid, where they had an ending, and as long as you got to the end without crashing or getting shot down, that would have been a lot more fun to play, I think.
Right. My other G.I. Joe simulator was for Atari, was for Battlezone. Did you ever play Battlezone?
I don't think I had Battlezone.
Battlezone was a tank game. You were in the cockpit of the tank, and so it kind of gave you that like visor look, like view screen look, and it had a little mini radar in the corner to tell you which way to swing your turret. Battlezone was really good especially for the time, and that was I always imagined I was in a MOBAT shooting down covers with that. But I did have the Covert Strikes game, which had great box art.
Yeah.
And
that's about it.
Yeah, that's about it. It had the paddles, and my paddles always broke. I never had a pair of paddles that were good. You had to the only way to get any kind of control for me was I had to try to picture this, listeners, for the old Atari paddles. I had to put my whole hand, and I'm a big guy, I have big mitts now, but I had to put my whole hand around the paddle and squeeze so hard to get some kind of fine control over where, spinning it left and right. Yeah. It's almost like I had to squeeze it to not just have it randomly go all over the place.
Sure.
So
the paddle technology was not great.
Yeah, so that was really hard to play. And then, But you still had Giant Cobra spitting venom on dudes running, and you could name those Joes. I'd be like, there's Doc, there's Stalker, he's running, there's Luke or Duke, Luke Skywalker. There's Scarlet running, but it was all in your imagination because the sprites had no.
Yeah, it seemed like gameplay for some other concept that they just sort of.
The technology had limitations, but however, if they had done like a combat style game where you were driving around in a because you could do the outline as we see here, and I know the graphics are this would be 64-bit versus 8-bit, so I get it. Whatever Atari was. Atari was an 8-bit because NES was 16-bit. So Atari was 8-bit, yeah. NES was 16, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The shape of a HISS tank is identifiable. So if you had a combat kind of Atari game where there was a HISS tank versus, say, a Mobat.
Yeah, that could work.
That could capture the essence of G.I. Joe vehicles going at it, And then the next stage, same format, but now you have a Rattler versus a Sky Striker, or a Dragonfly kind of a thing, or Fang versus Dragonfly, but in that combat, which is sort of what we have here, really.
Yeah,
but that could have been a thing on Atari.
Yeah, in the vehicle modes, all of the opponents are ground-based and they don't move. So you have the advantage in your vehicle.
Oh, so the HISS tanks don't move at all?
No, they're stationary.
Interesting.
And that's one of the reasons I didn't like playing in vehicle mode as much. I will say the animation on the Dragonfly, especially with the rotors, is top-notch. It looks great. I'm looking at a game screen right now. One of the environments for the player in player mode is a Cobra base. And, this is 84. I'm assuming it was designed in 84, released in 85. So this is pre-Terror Drome.
Right.
But this base has Terror Drome vibes.
Oh, cool.
But if you look, it has one of those things that I don't like, especially in a play set, where if there's, say, printed graphics that have characters on the graphics.
Oh, yeah. I
never liked that.
Oh, really? I always love that. They do that a lot with Bat Caves. Where anytime you see a Batcave statue or something, there's always it makes it look like Bruce Wayne is just staring at still photos of the Joker and the Riddler and Catwoman. Like that's the work he's up to, staring at their pictures.
I mean, it's one thing if they're on a monitor,
right?
But like there's Star Wars in the Creature Cantina, for example. There's all those characters printed on the wall that don't move. Mm-hmm. Or like there's the Sears cardboard Cloud City. There's a stormtrooper printed there. It's like if I'm playing, if there's a stormtrooper there that can't move, it's basically a non-playable character.
Oh, right.
It breaks the reality for me.
Yeah.
So in this Cobra base level, there are 2 Cobra technicians seated at these computer terminals that
ignoring the gunplay that's happening around them.
Exactly. And there's also a little Easter egg. If you'll notice, one of the terminals on the monitors, it says NC, and then the next monitor says C1701.
Oh, you're right. Oh, yeah, that's so funny. It's Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. And the middle one, it says alert.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's great.
So, and then this is the one. It's got the pop-up Cobra cannon, I guess you'd call it. It pops up from behind the computer terminals, and those will do a lot of damage if they hit you.
Cool. The video I'm watching has it must be Stalker. The sprite
Stalker
must
Scrap Iron.
Yeah, I think so. But Stalker looks more like Ripcord.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a brown face and a mustache.
Does he?
And in the one I'm watching, he does.
Oh, the one I'm watching just looks all green. Oh, so actually, technically, I think he looks more like Hit and Run from later years, because didn't Hit and Run have full camo on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, in addition to the Commodore 64, there is a version for the Apple II, which has less good graphics and coloring.
Okay. Well, I don't. To be honest, I'm not sure which one I'm looking at. I mean, it says it's the 64 version, but that's on YouTube. But who knows? But yeah. Again, listeners, if you want to check this stuff out on YouTube, C64 long play G.I. Joe, or just Google G.I. Joe's Commodore 64. You'll find plenty of videos on it.
That's the one I'm looking at too. And he's fighting against Scrap Iron, who's red and black instead of red.
Yeah. See, my eyes are either.
Looks like Stalker.
You don't think that looks like Stalker?
Oh, I think it does.
Oh, see, I think it looks like. I guess it does. See, I don't know. I don't. Maybe. Well, listen. My eyes are terrible. My eyes are terrible, and I can't see well anymore. So listeners, you got to check that out. And you also have to go check out Dave Amiott at Open Fist Theater in Atwater Village if you're in the Los Angeles area. But the other thing that you need to do is Dave does really great custom mashup action figures. He works he works really hard on them. He does.
Well, that I will correct you because
you don't work hard on them.
No. For a long time, my online handle was Lazy Customizer.
Okay, literally thank you for correcting me, because that is an absolute lie. Then he doesn't work very hard, but he sells them, and he's under the eBay name of TARDIS, as aforementioned Doctor Who, TARDIS 5677, and you currently have a Dr. Venom, I believe, for sale.
Yeah, it's a 6-inch style Dr. Venom. And I'm perfectly happy to share my recipe here because you can probably tell what it is. I took a 6-inch Grand Moff Tarkin from the Star Wars line. I put the head on the Marvel Legends Mobius from the Loki TV show because he's just in a suit. And then I swapped on the lab coat from the Mr. Fantastic figure Marvel Legends. And, I repainted the chest and the necktie and the face, but so I only point out that I'm lazy because there are some customizers who do excellent work. Just, high quality airbrush paint applications, all original sculpted parts, just amazing work. But they'll often charge $200-$300 for one figure. And I don't. So, I usually like to make back what I spent on parts and maybe a little for the craftsmanship.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that. And I think you're doing more custom work than I do. So you're not that lazy, Dave.
Thanks. I mean, I have in the works, I have made one version of 6-inch Tomax and Zaymot in suits.
Mm-hmm.
I have another one of those on my workbench right now. I'll try and get them up in the next week or two. So there's that. But I don't do a whole lot. I'm waiting for some parts to become available when the Indiana Jones line goes on clearance. Because I don't want to pay $26 for a figure I'm going to take apart.
Yeah, that seems to, unless each part can be used for something else. But usually you use like one piece of it, and then the rest goes into the bin for some later use.
And it'll sit around for 2 or 3 years until hey, I can use this for that.
I've got all those. I've been getting those. I've been snapping up those. So as we record this, it's the weekend of the release of Dial of Destiny. I loved it. I loved it. I thought it was great, and I'm very happy that they're putting out these Indiana Jones figures. I don't know for how long that line will last. To be frank, that it's not like Star Wars where there's a jillion different characters you can actually do. There is really a limited number, but I like this line so far, and I'm excited to be getting them.
Well, they just recently announced some more from Last Crusade.
Yep.
They're going to make the Henry Sr. I think they're limiting themselves a little more than they did in 2008, where they don't seem to be making a lot of German soldiers or German military personnel.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
You need your bad guys, but I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not gonna.
Bad guy, so's Belloc.
Yeah. Oh man, Mads Mikkelsen's he made a great bad guy in Dial of Destiny.
Okay.
Like he was born to play a Nazi in an Indiana Jones movie. It's fabulous. You haven't seen it yet?
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, okay.
Would you want a 6-inch scale Mutt Williams?
Well, aren't they making one?
I haven't seen one announced.
Oh, okay. Would I want one? No.
Okay.
But when they make one, will I probably buy one? Sure. But do I, do I want one? Yeah, I'm good. I'm good with that.
I don't even know.
Any Harrison any day. You give me Harrison any day of the week, though.
Okay.
Yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on the movie too, but I don't want to get into spoiler territory. And it doesn't sound like you've seen it yet.
No, I probably won't see it till it's on home video. I'm not too. I think I've read a plot synopsis.
Mm-hmm.
I know why Mutt Williams is not in it.
No. I didn't want to say anything, so we won't say anything for this podcast. So who knows? Maybe we'll do a Joe and Dave on indie podcast, and
that was actually a joke that I wrote for last week's live show that did not make it in. Well, I'd come up with a runner where the anchor who's delivering the weekend update style jokes, she would keep getting interrupted by people who wanted to take over for her. And the last one was going to be Phoebe Waller-Bridge coming out, say, "Oh, hey, I just took over for Harrison Ford. Now I'm looking for other people to take over. Do you want a replacement anchor? No, get out. Okay. Shia LaBeouf hasn't already been here, has he? No. Okay.
Ha. Yeah. Well, he didn't do himself any favors.
Yeah.
By crapping on that movie.
Sure.
Yeah, anyway, and I've got listen. I appreciate his work. And I know he's a troubled dude, and I know where that comes from. So I've got sympathy and empathy and all that stuff for him. But, still doesn't.
Would have been nice to see Short Round again.
That's the stinger. That is absolutely the one. And I know, obviously, they were making this before Key, blew up with Everything Everywhere. But that is the I really would have loved to check in and see what happened to him. Hopefully. Happy long life with a nice family or whatever he wanted out of life. Maybe he's an adventurer too, who knows. But that would have been a nice check-in.
So again, at the risk of spoiling it for your listeners, does Indy end up with an eye patch at the end?
No, he does not. Not like no, he doesn't, right? But it does not mean that young Indiana Jones episode is out of continuity. Let's put it that way. Was it the Night of the Blues or whatever it was?
Yeah, I didn't watch all of them.
Yeah, I've seen that one. It doesn't. Nothing in this movie prevents that from staying in continuity. Mystery of the Blues, I think, is what it was. Mystery of the Blues. Anyway, enough indie talk. Enough G.I. Joe 64 talk. I mean, guys, this is really cool. Check this out. If you've never really looked into it, this is one of those memories. Again, I thought I had seen it when I was a kid. I knew I'd never had it, but I thought I had seen it. I don't think I've ever seen this game, and I'm so happy that we did. Dave, thanks for reaching out and saying, let's talk about the N64 G.I. Joe game.
C64.
I keep saying N64. Yeah, Commodore 64. Yeah, you're right. Thanks for reaching out and talking about it, man.
Sure. If you go to archive.org, you can read the instruction manual, and I think they have an emulator that you can load. I didn't try it, and I don't know what kind of controller you need for it.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe one of your listeners will give it a bash.
Yeah, well, I actually thought about this. I put some thought into this. I'm not going to recommend any specific emulators because there's a lot of emulators out there that have malware, and what I don't want to do is recommend one that I don't realize has some malware, and I screw someone's computer up. Right. So I'm not recommending any specific malware, but I did find there are browsers that emulate it. So all you got to do is find the file, and you could drop it into the browser, and then that's probably the safest way to do it. Because there's nothing about these games that can't be played in a browser. Browser probably has more technology.
Or just find an old Commodore and get the
just dig out your old Commodore
and turn it over a couple of times.
Yeah, boot it up, kick all the cockroaches out that have moved in. But yeah, so I'm not gonna recommend any different emulator because you never know what's out there. But there are plenty of reputable emulators, and you guys can find it. It's very findable if you're a computer person. And if not, and you just want to check it out, again, go to YouTube. There's plenty of play videos, and it's a whole lot of fun. So Dave Amiott, thank you so much for joining us this week on You on Joe.
Thanks, I had a great time.
Always a good time to hear from you, my friend. And now you, Joe, and Joeing is half the battle.